Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're exploring the totally unexpected and honestly deeply fascinating history behind an everyday object that is probably sitting in your desk drawer right now. We are talking all about the American pencil.
But seriously, I want to pose this question directly to you. How much do we really know about this simple yellow tool? Because before computers, before smartphones, before digital keyboards completely took over our lives, this single, unassuming tool built the absolute foundation of modern education and industry.
Okay, let's dive right into this. When you think about it, the ingredients are deceivingly simple, right? A little wood, some graphite, clay, a tiny bit of metal. But when you combine them, this tiny stick of wood and graphite literally became the invisible machinery behind American publishing, manufacturing, and education. An engineer's first design, a child's first math test, an architect's blueprint. They all relied on this one little tool.
Section 1. From Ballast to Crucibles. So let's travel way back to the year 1812 in Marblehead, Massachusetts. Young Joseph Dixon was the son of a local ship owner, and he spent a lot of his time hanging out at the harbor, watching trading ships arrive from the Orient. Now, these ships used heavy chunks of Ceylonese graphite in their hulls as ballast, basically just dead weight to keep the vessels upright during long ocean voyages. And when the ships finally arrived in Massachusetts, the owners would just dump this graphite straight into the harbor. To them, it was literal garbage. But young Dixon? He actually saw potential. So, with the help of a local chemist and a cabinet maker, this 13-year-old kid used that discarded graphite to create his very first crude pencil.
Now, you might be thinking, wow, that must have been the start of a massive pencil empire. But history loves a plot twist. Dixon's first major success didn't actually come from pencils at all. Fast forward to 1846, during the Mexican-American War. The U.S. was seeing this massive surge in iron and steel production, and Dixon realized his graphite could be used to make heat-resistant crucibles, which are these vessels used for melting metals at extreme temperatures. He also used it to invent a super popular stove polish, and from these heavy industrial and household products, he pocketed a massive early profit of $60,000.
And this just brilliantly illustrates the irony of Joseph Dixon's early career. While those industrial crucibles were fully funding his life, his true passion, actually manufacturing pencils, was putting him $5,000 in the hole. In his first year of serious business, the great American pencil pioneer literally lost money on his dream. Why? Well, because at the time, Americans still vastly preferred traditional ink and quills.
Section 2. The Civil War Pencil Boom. But society was about to shift dramatically. Picture this. You're a Union or Confederate soldier marching hundreds of miles. You absolutely cannot easily carry a sloshing glass bottle of ink and a fragile quill. It's messy, it's cumbersome, and it's completely impractical on a battlefield. But a wooden pencil? It's dry, it's highly portable, and perfectly erasable. So when the Civil War broke out, demand for pencils absolutely skyrocketed because soldiers desperately needed a convenient, reliable way to write letters home to their families.
To meet this completely unprecedented demand, Dixon had to innovate, and fast. In 1866, he invented a wood planing machine that could churn out 132 pencils every single minute. That is flying. Finally, mass production was truly viable. He could produce identical, high-quality wooden pencils at a scale the country had never seen before.
Let's walk through how this small operation turned into a total industrial titan. Dixon moves his operations to Jersey City in 1840 and gets his main factory open by 1847. Now, sadly, Joseph Dixon passed away in 1869, which is tragic because it was just as his pencil business was finally matching the success of his crucibles. But look at how things exploded right after his death. By 1872, the Joseph Dixon Crucible Company was producing 86,000 pencils every single day. They were accounting for a third of all American consumption. And then, just a year later, in 1873, the company made a monumental move by acquiring the American Graphite Company.
Section 3. The Ticonderoga takes over.
That 1873 acquisition, that's what birthed the iconic brand name we all recognize today. See, the American Graphite Company gave Dixon access to this incredibly rich graphite ore from Lead Hill, which is located near the historic Fort Ticonderoga in upstate New York. And boom, the Dixon Ticonderoga pencil was born. Now let's geek out for a quick second. If you're a vintage pencil collector, the early Ticonderoga numbering system is just gloriously chaotic. They assigned these random 4-digit IDs to everything. The classic number 2, that was the 1386. But then you had the number 2 and 5/10, Seriously, 5/10, which was the 1387. Over the decades, they shifted these numbers around constantly. The 1385 eventually became a pencil with an oversized eraser. And if you ever managed to find a round Ticonderoga without a metal ferrule, the incredibly elusive model 1360, you have found a genuine rare piece of stationary history.
And hey, speaking of that ferrule, the little metal band that holds the eraser to the wood, its history is a perfect reflection of world events. The original Ticonderoga featured an unpainted brass ferrule. But during World War II, strict metal shortages forced the company to adapt. So they temporarily swapped the brass for green plastic and cardboard and added those distinctive yellow stripes. That WWI workaround actually became so recognizable and so loved that the iconic green and yellow striped ferrule is still the brand's signature look to this day.
Section 4. Monopolies and Corporate Mergers.
So, by the mid-20th century, the totally innocent pencil industry had transformed into a completely cutthroat corporate battleground. The crucial point here is just how completely dominant a few companies had become. Prior to the Great Depression, an astounding 90% of the entire domestic pencil market was controlled by just 4 companies. They were known as the Big Four: Dixon, Eberhard Faber, American, and Eagle. They held overwhelming control over the entire supply chain.
Now, when you control that much of a market, the government starts paying attention. In 1954, federal officials finally cracked down. The Big Four were charged under the Sherman antitrust law with illegal price fixing and controlling 75% of all export sales. To avoid a massive, drawn-out legal battle, each company pleaded no defense, agreed to stop their monopolistic practices, and paid a nominal fine of just $5,000.
So after the monopoly was essentially broken up, Dixon had to adapt to survive. In 1957, they merged with the American Crayon Company, which really expanded their reach into schools. Fast forward to 1983, and a real estate and restaurant company called Bryn Mawr Corporation acquired Dixon, officially changing the corporate name to Dixon Ticonderoga Company. But, as we know, global economics eventually catch up. After more than 2 centuries as a proudly independent American producer, the company was purchased in 2005 by FILA, which is a massive Italian art supplies company, and sadly, the physical manufacturing of the pencils was moved entirely out of the United States.
Section 5. Surviving the Digital Age.
All right, we have to address the technological elephant in the room. Over the last few decades, we've seen the rise of personal computers, smartphones, tablets, cloud documents, and now artificial intelligence. By all logical measures, paper and wood should be completely 100% obsolete. And yet, the physical pencil hasn't disappeared. Why? Because millions of children still learn their first letters by holding a wooden pencil. Architects still sketch, artists still draw, and woodworkers still mark their cuts with a piece of graphite. The technology around us completely changed, but that fundamental human need to instantly connect a physical thought to a physical page, that did not.
And that brings us to our final takeaway. Today we saw how a teenager looking at discarded ship ballast in 1812 ended up creating a product that outlasted the quill, outlasted wars, and is currently outlasting the invention of the touchscreen. It's a fantastic reminder that history isn't only written in books. Sometimes it starts with a pencil. I want to leave you with this to ponder. In a world where almost all our words are stored on invisible servers, what is the enduring, irreplaceable power of making your own physical mark on paper? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.